At this moment, the farm buddies are happily working when suddenly several deep trenches appear in the field, and the sweet potato field has been completely turned over. There are also many cattle hoof prints on the ground. These footprints are really too big, and Sejun Park cannot imagine what kind of creatures might have come. Moreover, such high mounds of soil have been piled up. These monsters must be very strong. However, Sejun Park soon discovers something different, so he quickly climbs to the top of the mound. Teo, worried about dangers outside, wants Sejun Park to come back quickly, but he still has something to confirm. Holding the dug-up soil in his hands, Sejun Park is very excited. This soil is completely different from the original, not only loose and soft, but also containing appropriate moisture and stickiness, making it perfectly fertile soil. Sejun Park didn't expect that beneath this land there would be such high-quality soil. He thinks that this land could potentially become a blessed place. Unfortunately, they do not have farming machinery, and it seems impractical to turn over such deep ground with Shovel Bunny by himself, but still, there are more possibilities now. Just then, Administrator Aileen asks in a panic what Sejun Park is doing outside. Aileen explains that although the blue moon has disappeared, the territories of the monsters are in chaos, and she immediately tells him to hurry back to the cave. Seeing this, Sejun Park starts his return journey and also asks Aileen if there was any trouble last night. Hearing this, she says she's fine and, as the farmer, should focus more on his own safety. Sejun Park is curious why Aileen is so concerned about him today, but he soon understands. Today is the harvest time for the blue moon crops. After returning to the cave, he specially thanks Teo for its company and then tells Aileen to look forward to what's coming. But Teo now wants to take a nap while Sejun Park begins to harvest the crops. He slowly peels off the shiny corn, and the message indicates that this is health corn infused with blue moon energy, offering a lot of experience points. Peeling back the tender leaves of the health corn, inside are crystal-like, plump blue corn kernels, which can permanently increase health by 0.1 points, and its grade is D. Thanks to Sejun Park being a D-grade farmer, the effects of the current crops have improved by 2 times compared to before. After checking all the information, Sejun Park is ready to sneak a taste, unable to resist trying the sweet flavor, but the administrator suddenly appears and reminds Sejun Park of his promise, so he goes to pick the blue moon magic cherry tomatoes. This time the blue moon crops are abundant, so Sejun Park gives Aileen 5 blue moon magic cherry tomatoes. After taking the items, she leaves to taste them. Aileen in the administrator's space is very happy. She did not expect to have as many as 5 blue moon magic cherry tomatoes this time. Since ordinary cherry tomatoes can make her dragon heart beat, the blue moon ones need no further mention. The next second, Aileen opens her mouth and stuffs all 5 cherry tomatoes inside. The improved blue moon cherry tomatoes are delicious, and their wonderful taste makes Aileen spin around on the spot. But coming back to her senses, she remembers the key point at hand. Now is not the time to experience the taste. She should focus on sensing the mana flow. As Aileen delves into the magic brought by the cherry tomatoes, her dragon heart, after absorbing the magic, starts beating again and continues to thump wildly. This made Aileen uncontrollably excited, but the next second she felt something was wrong because the beating of the dragon heart was too fast. Immediately after, Aileen helplessly fell to the ground, the discomfort in her chest causing the black dragon to emit a painful moan. After offering the blue cherry tomatoes to Aileen, Sejun Park continued to be busy with farm work. Sejun Park then started preparing today's breakfast. He put the blue moon corn into a pot filled with water and then covered the lid. As the fire continued to burn vigorously, the small pot on the pile of stones began to boil. Sejun Park placed a small basin in the pot and used corn leaves as a separator to achieve a steaming effect. The remaining corn leaves and corn silk, he placed them out to dry, preparing to make corn silk tea later. Just then, the little rabbits also woke up, and they happily greeted Sejun Park. Sejun Park asked where the babies were, and Mr. Rabbit pointed to the room, indicating that they were still sleeping with Mrs. Rabbit. Sejun Park took out the blue moon crops harvested this time. Besides those given to Aileen, there were still 8 blue moon cherry tomatoes, and once done, everyone could share and eat the steamed blue moon corn together. Seeing this, Mr. Rabbit pointed to the blue moon magic cherry tomatoes in his hand, indicating that having blue moon magic cherry tomatoes was enough. There was only 1 blue moon corn, so it was to be reserved for Sejun Park to eat. After understanding Mr. Rabbit's intentions, Sejun Park was touched. Although the little rabbits also wanted to eat the corn, Sejun Park felt bad about it, so he said after breakfast they would go pick corn and then have a good meal in the evening. Some time passed, and the queen honeybee was leading the little bees out to forage, while the corn Sejun Park cooked was now out of the pot. Looking at the glowing corn, he knew it must be delicious. Slowly taking the corn out, because it was too hot, Sejun Park gently blew on it a few times. Next, Sejun Park, holding the corn, was ready to start eating. The little rabbits were also happily eating the tomatoes, while other little rabbits had a few bites. The cart rabbit was already burping. However, Mr. Rabbit hadn't eaten yet. He wanted to take it back and enjoy it with Mrs. Rabbit. After the little rabbits had finished eating, Sejun Park started to eat delightfully. Just as he thought, the blue moon corn was incredibly sweet, and the sweet taste made it impossible for him to stop eating. In just a few seconds, Sejun Park had finished all the blue moon corn. Casually throwing the corn cob into the fire, he and the little rabbits prepared to go pick corn. The first batch of corn that was planted has all ripened. Now it's time to get to work. After harvesting, he also gained a lot of experience points. Ordinary health corn can break down 20 grams of fat and can also improve skin elasticity. Seeing this, Sejun Park thought about giving saving some for his mother and planned to soon send some harvest to his family along with his regards. Just then, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear and Bay also came to the entrance of the cave, and Sejun Park climbed out. He asked how the two were doing. Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear indicated they were safe. After coming out, Sejun Park immediately poured a lot of honey for Bay, while Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear's roasted fish was still being made. However, at that moment, Teo also jumped out, saying he was going down to sell some items. Bay picked up the little cat's cape. Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear and Bay were heading in the same direction, so they offered to take Teo there. While Bay and Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear are dropping off Teo, Sejun Park prepared to tidy up the farmland. Meanwhile, next to the teleportation crystal on the other side, the Ox King was watching the minotaurs below. He ordered his people to hand over what they had collected last night, angered that each minotaur had only brought back clay. Now, having inspected over 1,000 of his people, all the minotaurs had brought were clumps of clay. This made the Ox King unable to hold back any longer. He furiously pointed at the minotaurs and scolded them, for he demanded they bring back food, but all they brought back was dirt. The minotaurs felt very ashamed. They said there was no grass left on their territory because all the food had already been completely devoured by everyone, leaving only clay. Helpless, the Ox King could only sit on his throne. He was out of options. Recalling the prosperity of the past, the Ox King did not understand why it had come to this. His territory used to be a lush green prairie. Originally, the Ox King was the strongest monster guarding the waypoint area on the 99th floor. His clan is called the Black Minotaurs, a very powerful race. But every time the blue moon arrives, they go berserk and expend a lot of energy. If they don't replenish in time, their muscles will deteriorate. Therefore, the Ox King ordered the Minotaurs to eat grass in all parts of their territory during the blue moon period. However, their clan being large monsters with voracious appetites, over time, the growth rate of the grass could no longer keep up with their eating pace. Thus, this place turned into a barren land where not a single blade of grass grows. The young Minotaurs faced a very bleak situation of low muscle development due to the lack of food. Considering this, the Ox King decided on a plan to send his people to find food again. Next up was 1003, but there was no response after calling for a long time. Finally, after a while, 1003 slowly stepped forward. He had gone too far during his rampage during the blue moon, so it took him a long time to return. Hearing this, the Ox King breathed a sigh of relief. It was good enough that he returned safely. But soon, the Ox King widened his eyes and hurried forward. Seeing this, 1003 was stunned. Quickly approaching 1003, the Ox King loudly asked what the thing on his head was. 1003 explained that the thing on his head was a fragrant red root he had found inadvertently during his rampage. He too was puzzled about when he had found it. Meanwhile, Aileen in the administrator's space finally woke up. It seemed she had passed out earlier. Slowly standing up, Aileen bumped into the chandelier. Seeing this, she was startled. She didn't expect the light to be so low when she woke up. But then, looking at the crystal ball below, Aileen finally understood that it wasn't the light's position that had changed, but that she had grown. In fact, she had grown for the first time in hundreds of years. Initially, she was puzzled by her growth. Thinking about the effects of the blue moon magic cherry tomatoes, Aileen understood. Her growth had been stagnant for a long time, and now she had absorbed a large amount of magic all at once, which brought about this significant change. However, for Aileen, the key was to keep the dragon heart beating. Even after growing, her dragon heart was still silent. Seeing this, Aileen felt somewhat dejected, as there still seemed to be no immediate cure. But at least now she saw hope, and her affection for Sejun Park grew even stronger. But upon closer examination of the content in the crystal ball, she noticed something amiss. It turned out that Sejun Park and the others were secretly eating without her knowledge. But the crystal ball was too small, and Aileen couldn't see clearly. Just as she was about to grab the large crystal ball left by Grandfather Kaiser, she got stuck in the doorway because she had grown. Left with no choice, Aileen could only shout helplessly. She too wanted to taste the new delicacies. On the other side, Bay had come back. Below, the buddies were still hard at work picking corn, with the cart rabbit transporting corn and carrying a little rabbit inside. Seeing this, Sejun Park greeted the young one inside. At this moment, the last pot of corn was also about to be ready, and Sejun Park asked the cart rabbit to notify everyone that it was time to eat. Slowly lifting the lid, the health corn inside was continuously steaming. At this moment, Aileen left the room, expressing her desire to try the corn and mentioning that she only needed one. However, Sejun Park had already prepared Aileen's portion, though it was not yet finished. Aileen then said she could wait patiently. After a while, the little rabbits brought over the roasted corn. Today they had prepared a lot of corn, half roasted and half boiled. Thanks to the seasonings Teo had brought back, the corn now had an extra layer of sugar coating. However, Sejun Park wanted to add something to his own portion. After sprinkling the cheese powder, he rummaged through his backpack and then took out chili powder, which he had found unexpectedly in Teo's rucksack. Following that, Sejun Park sprinkled the chili powder over the roasted corn, and just like that, his favorite dish, spicy sweet corn, was ready. Before eating, Sejun Park brought over Aileen's portion. While the little rabbits were enjoying the roasted corn, the time for the rabbit couple to look after the babies had also become apparent, but as a result, they themselves had no time to eat. Seeing this, Sejun Park thought of a good solution. He took out the spoons bought by Teo and then made the corn into individual kernels. This way, the babies could eat by themselves, and the rabbit couple would also have time to eat. Seeing that everyone had started eating corn, Sejun Park finally began to enjoy his own dish. However, at that moment, the rabbit younglings suddenly started crying out. Looking down, he instantly spit out his corn. It turned out the little rabbits had climbed into the bowl, but the sweet corn was sticky, and it immediately stuck to them. Seeing this, Sejun Park was amused, and then he helped the rabbit younglings remove the corn kernels. Now, Sejun Park could also empathize with the struggles of the rabbit couple. Managing both children and work indeed was not easy. His longing for Teo the CEO grew stronger because, with the little cat around, he could entrust the babies to it. After having a hearty meal with everyone, Sejun Park did not forget Bae and Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear. He brought out roasted fish, boiled corn, and baked sweet potatoes. Meanwhile, on the 38th floor of the Black Tower, members of the Phoenix Guild, having waited too long for the cat merchant, were becoming impatient. Another member speculated that something unexpected had happened, but a teammate had already given the tomatoes to his girlfriend last time, so why continue to buy this time? Hearing this, the man finally revealed the truth. It turns out that the magic cherry tomatoes had been driven to prohibitive prices outside the tower, now selling for 500,000 each, which is why he wanted to stock up on some to resell. On the other side, a female teammate was also discussing with Dongshik, worrying that waiting any longer would disrupt their plans, and they were also running out of supplies they brought. After some thought, Dongshik decided to let the others leave the tower to regroup, while he and the remaining two teammates would stay here and continue to wait. Originally, Dongshik thought that the blonde girl Jessica would stay behind, but unexpectedly, Suha replaced her. Upon hearing this, Suha explained that Jessica had already succeeded in losing weight and no longer needed the cherry tomatoes, so she gave the opportunity to her. Her reason for participating was not out of interest in the cherry tomatoes. Suha brought more cat treats, solely to have another chance to touch the cat's paw pads. However, the Teo they were all eagerly waiting for was still on the road. The little cat wanted to sell everything quickly and then go back to continue looking after the babies. After a long journey, Teo finally arrived at his destination. This place is the Peddler Pathway on the 60th floor, and it is also feels the widest to Teo. The pathway leads all the way up to the sky. It wasn't long before it was Teo's turn. He explained his merchant level and destination to the 38th floor to the little dog, and then the little cat went in. But what Teo didn't know was that behind him, 3 pairs of eyes were staring intently at him. They were from the Silver Wolf tribe, who are also the best free company in the dungeon. Their target was precisely the Teo depicted in the portrait. A few silver wolves had come for the straw hat bought by the little cat. However, what puzzled Silver Wolf Elko was why the wealthy greed would spend a lot of money looking for the straw hat. Hearing this, the tribe leader Elka also didn't understand. They just needed to follow the employer's instructions. As mercenaries, the Silver Wolves understood that the Peddler Pathway could be used by other organizations in the tower besides merchants. But what the few wolves didn't realize was that Jairus was observing them from behind. She couldn't understand why the Silver Wolf tribe was also following Teo. After careful thought, she guessed it was because of the straw hat the little cat had taken. Now she wanted to know just how important this straw hat was, enough to make a wealthy financier hire a mercenary group. Worried that Teo might run into trouble, Jairus decided to follow and see. She couldn't be sure what the Silver Wolf tribe might do. Meanwhile, the little cat hadn't realized it was being watched by multiple parties. However, no accidents happened along the way. Upon reaching the 38th floor, Teo loudly greeted the adventurers. Seeing this, the adventurers gathered around. During the time Dongshik and the others were waiting, members from other teams also arrived. However, the number of bidders was much less compared to previous auctions, but the little cat hadn't noticed yet. It just wanted to sell everything as quickly as possible. Hearing someone ask why he was so late, Teo simply responded that he had been delayed by some matters. But this time, he brought even more special magic cherry tomatoes. Hearing this, the adventurers showed expressions of doubt. After raising the expectations to the maximum, the little cat decisively pulled out a D-grade magic cherry tomato. Compared to the E-grade, all its attributes had doubled. Hearing this, members of the Phoenix Guild felt somewhat incredulous until they held it in their hands and checked the information themselves. Only then did they realize everything the little cat said was true. Outside the tower, the price of the magic cherry tomatoes had already skyrocketed. If it were a higher grade, Dongshik anticipated making a significant profit. Today, Teo brought 2,000 tomatoes, auctioning them in batches of 400 each. After a period of bidding, all the tomatoes the little cat brought were sold out. What made Teo even happier was that, with this transaction completed, he also earned 1,000 dungeon coins, which would allow him to upgrade to an intermediate peddler, which means he can disclose the source of his products. As Teo was fantasizing about his wonderful future life, Suha approached wanting to take a photo with him. Seeing this, Teo extended his cat paw and allowed everyone to touch it while charging them a fee. To his surprise, upon closer inspection, he found that Suha was the only one present. Seeing this, Teo was a bit stunned, and then he asked Suha about it. He learned that the reason there were so few people was because he had arrived too late, and now the little cat realized that the number of people at the auction had also been much fewer. Seeing that Teo was very disappointed, Suha took out 3 cat treats to comfort him. The little cat had initially hoped to earn more and then exchange it for more CEO privileges from Sejun Park, but now now it had only gained cat treats. Just then, a voice of surprise came from nearby. Two girls asked Teo if he was the peddler cat who takes selfies with people. Teo asked how did they know about him, and the girls responded that they saw him on Instagram. The two girls proceeded to ask for a selfie with Teo. Instagram, a concept unfamiliar to Teo, but the little cat quickly thought of a new business opportunity. So, he agreed to the photo request, but he also required compensation. On the other side, outside the cave, the little rabbits had already begun today's labor, all working together to repair the farmland that was damaged during the blue moon. Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear and Bay were also among them, and with their help, the work of restoring the farmland progressed much faster. A few hours later, the farmland was essentially ready for planting. Today, Sejun Park brought new crops. He slowly opened the bag, revealing some peanut seeds inside. Just this morning, through picking corn, Sejun Park had leveled up to level 16, and thanks to the high agility, his work speed had greatly increased. As for the peanut seeds, he had acquired them last night. The seed store had opened again yesterday, and considering the peanuts' effect on restoring soil fertility, Sejun Park decisively chose peanut seeds. After purchasing the peanut seeds, his points at the seed store had accumulated to 106, and with just 100 points, the seed store could be upgraded. Following Sejun Park's contribution of points, his seed store level went from rookie to ordinary. Afterward, Sejun Park could purchase up to 4 types of seeds, and the variety of crops on his farm would continue to increase. While planting peanuts, Sejun Park and his buddies began organizing the corn stalks. Thankfully, Bay's help, the progress was very quick. Sejun Park then harvested all the stalks, transported them to the ground, and placed them around the peanut fields, which could slow down the evaporation of moisture from the soil by the sun that never sets. He and the farm buddies could then wait longer between watering the peanuts, freeing up labor for other tasks. After working for a long time, Sejun Park finally finished picking the new corn seeds, which could then be soaked in water for use. But at that moment, the rabbit younglings started playing with the seeds. Seeing this, Sejun Park quickly took them away. Now, everyone was busy expanding the farmland outside the cave, and the cat was out doing business, so the rabbit younglings were quite bored. However, Sejun Park soon found something for them to do. He then called the little rabbits to come closer. From his backpack, he took out some cloth bags with seeds and placed tasty dried carrots inside them. Sejun Park allowed the young rabbits to play while distributing the dried carrots to the hardworking adult rabbits. However, some of the young rabbits started eating them, so Sejun Park had no choice but to keep reminding them. After explaining what they needed to do, the young rabbits began distributing the dried carrots to the adult rabbits. Seeing such adorable young rabbits, Sejun Park felt it necessary to discuss with Teo about preparing some cute clothes. This would surely make the babies even more adorable. Meanwhile, on the border of the barren land and the forest, 1003 was walking alone on a quest for food, but the blue moon had caused gaps in his memory, so he could only roughly remember a direction. Previously, the Ox King had plucked a small sweet potato from his head, and then asked 1003 where he had gotten it. Hearing this, 1003 thought for a long time. He only remembered it was somewhere on the edge of their territory. Hearing his subordinate's words, the Ox King realized this wasn't something from his own territory and tossed the sweet potato into his mouth to taste it. Just a simple chew made all the minotaurs drool with desire. The sweet freshness of the small sweet potato had the Ox King enthralled, so he ordered 1003 to find the place where this crop grew. After searching for a long time with no clues, but worried he will be punished by his captain's enormous muscles, 1003 dared not slack off. Soon, he arrived at the forest bordering the wasteland. However, 1003 was very afraid, worried about encountering the giant red-haired bear. But just then, a fresh scent of leaves wafted through the air. Following the scent, 1003 quickly widened his eyes. In front of him lay many very appetizing-looking corn stalks, which to him were just leaves. Seeing this, 1003 couldn't resist and immediately began to eat. The delicious taste made 1003 bellow out loud, although he had never seen leaves of this shape before. But for 1003, if it's tasty, that's enough. After a full meal, he picked up the remaining corn stalks and ran back. However, 1003's arrival in the forest alerted the Crimson Grizzly Bear. Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear quickly detected the intruder. The Crimson Grizzly Bear was very angry about the arrival of the enemy, but the priority was to first inform Sejun Park. She quickly contacted Aileen, who was still bathing. The wonderful bathing time was disrupted, and Aileen unhappily asked the giant bear what was the matter. After receiving the information from the giant bear's investigation, the administrator hurriedly woke up Sejun Park. Aileen told Sejun Park that the Crimson Grizzly Bear had spotted other unidentified creatures outside. At that moment, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear also rushed back, and so the farm buddies all came outside. However, the corn leaves they had laboriously moved yesterday were now just some remnants left. Seeing this, Sejun Park was dumbfounded. He didn't understand what had happened. The corn stalks had been stolen clean, yet last night Sejun Park had not heard any noise. Seeing this, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear suggested that it might have been done by the ones with horns. Thinking about it, Sejun Park also guessed that it was probably the monsters that had come to dig holes during the last blue moon. Fortunately, the monsters had only taken the covering leaves and had not damaged the farmland. Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear mentioned that she would increase the patrol area in the future, but Sejun Park still told her not to overdo it. As long as everyone was safe and healthy, that was enough. No one was hurt, which also relieved Sejun Park somewhat. After this incident, Sejun Park decided to make some preparations. Protecting the farmland could not rely solely on Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear. Everyone at least needed the ability to protect themselves in the face of danger. Time slowly moved to the next day, which was also a very important day. The little rabbits brought corn leaves to shield the queen honeybee cocoon from the sun, and after waving goodbye to Sejun Park, the buddies went down to continue their work. Today was the day the queen poisonous honeybee cocoon would hatch, and Sejun Park was to stay here until the queen honeybee emerged from the cocoon. The number of poisonous honeybees inside the cave had sharply increased to a considerable number, and if a second queen honeybee established her own hive outside, it could also better protect the nearby area. After waiting a long time, finally, the queen honeybee cocoon began to stir. Sejun Park was already feeling sleepy. He had prepared fresh tomato flowers and sweet potato flowers, just waiting to meet the queen honeybee. However, Sejun Park eventually couldn't resist and fell asleep. After a while, the bee cocoon under the corn leaves suddenly began to tremble, followed by a crackling sound. The cocoon also emitted a pure white light, and as the light grew stronger, the shaking in the onion leaf basin increased. The next second, a tender young queen bee emerged from the corn leaves, and the long-awaited queen honeybee junior finally hatched. She stared with charming big eyes, still somewhat unaccustomed to her new body. The queen honeybee junior tried flapping her wings, and after a while, she managed to ascend slowly with some effort, then landed directly on Sejun Park's chest. Looking at the sleeping farmer, the queen honeybee junior sensed a familiar aroma, and soon the system prompted her to recognize Sejun Park as her master. Looking again at the farmer's face, the young queen honeybee had no more doubts. She happily held the fresh flowers Sejun Park had prepared, her face showing a hint of shyness. However, just then, the scent of the queen honeybee came from outside the cave. She joyfully greeted her child, and the young queen honeybee responded to her mother. Realizing that her child was still not fully adjusted, the queen honeybee took her up in flight. Under her mother's guidance, the young queen honeybee quickly learned to fly freely, and then she bowed in gratitude to the queen honeybee. Having learned to fly, she came in front of Sejun Park and rubbed against the farmer's face. After bidding farewell to Sejun Park, the queen honeybee junior flew away. When Sejun Park awoke, all he could see were numerous system notifications, and he had completely missed seeing the metamorphosed queen poisonous honeybee. On the other side, in the barren land, 1003 had already brought back the corn leaves, and although they looked good, 1003 was still confused. But the quantity is still too little, not enough to go around. Hearing this, 1003 burped, apologizing to the Ox King, saying he just couldn't help himself. Hearing this, the Ox King did not blame him, as gluttony is their clan's instinct. After understanding, the Ox King stuffed the corn leaves into his mouth, experiencing an unprecedented deliciousness. The Ox King valued 1003 even more. Turning his head towards the distant forest, the Ox King wondered what changes had occurred there. Although he wanted to go and get more food, as the boss of this area, the Ox King's time away from the waypoint is limited. However, 1003, having gorged himself, wanted to take a nap before setting off. However, the Ox King threatened 1003 with his axe and told him to get going that instant. On the 38th floor of the Black Tower, the little cat Teo's fan count has already exceeded 20,000, and the account features various photos of Suha and Teo together. It was precisely because of the content posted that the girls had come to take photos earlier. Suha is now worried that her secrecy might anger the little cat, and indeed, Teo is currently upset, not understanding why Suha hadn't told him about the account. Immediately after, the little cat voluntarily handed over the phone, then had Suha take photos to upload. Unexpectedly for Suha, Teo even willingly struck cute poses. Whether looking pitiful or lazily enchanting, the little cat was doing its best to show off its cuteness. Suha was more excited than Teo, grabbing the phone and frantically capturing every moment of the cat. Now Suha felt immensely satisfied, as Teo's cuteness was off the charts in her eyes. The little cat told Suha, if anyone wants to meet the cute wandering cat merchant, remember to have them bring compensation to the 38th floor. For a reward, it could satisfy any pose. Teo was one step closer to his cat star dream. After taking many sets of photos with Suha, they parted ways. However, after all that activity, the little cat was also a bit tired, looking forward to the next visit here. How many people would come to take photos, and thus he could earn a great deal of compensation. It even gave him hope of becoming the president one day. Thinking of his future happy cat life, Teo couldn't help but giggle on the spot. But soon, a blast of hot breath woke him from his daydream. Seeing this, the little cat quickly protected its hairstyle, which it had managed to groom just today. However, as he slowly looked up, Teo was startled. Above the little cat's head were Silver Wolf tribes Elko and Urko, who were blocking Teo's way. The two fierce wolves instantly frightened the little cat into a ball. At the same time, there was a noise from behind Teo, and it was Elka, the chieftain of the Silver Wolf tribe. The presence of the one behind was even more terrifying than the two in front. The next second, Elka swiped a paw next to the little cat, fiercely asking Teo if he had bought a straw hat at the blacksmith's workshop. The cat, shivering with fear, wondered what they wanted to do. Elka did not want to waste words, just wanting to know the whereabouts of the hat. If Teo didn't tell him, then he would be torn to shreds. But the little cat was was already scared to tears, and it was choking up, unable to speak. Just as the evil wolves were about to strike, a pine nut suddenly fell to the ground. Seeing this, Elka was puzzled about what it was, but the next second, the pine nut immediately emitted a strange smoke. In the blink of an eye, the smoke quickly spread, and soon the silver wolves realized that it was a stink bomb. As they were choked by the smoke and could not open their eyes, a pair of glowing eyes quietly appeared in the smoke. Then, a small paw grabbed Teo. Seeing that it was Jairus, the little fox from before, Teo was incredulous. However, the little fox signaled him to be quiet and quickly pulled the little cat to flee from there. By the time Elka opened his eyes, Jairus and Teo had already run far away. He wanted to call his two tribe members to chase after them, but Elko and Urko were smoked down to the ground and couldn't get up. Left with no choice, Elka gave up on today's hunt. The little fox said that the silver wolf tribe wouldn't be able to follow them for now, as the scent of the pine nut bomb would make it difficult for them to find the way. We can rest here for a while. After resting, Teo thanked Jairus, thinking he was going to die here today. Hearing this, the little fox said lightly, "I'm only returning the favor." In response, the little cat insisted on repaying Jairus and asked if she liked to eat grilled fish. Jairus saw this as the best opportunity to learn more about Teo, so she took the initiative to hit the road with Teo, just like last time, teaching her the ropes of business. Seeing this, the little cat happily agreed. However, before that, Teo wanted to go upgrade to an intermediate peddler. Hearing that the little cat was going to be promoted in just 4 months, Jairus accidentally revealed some information that she knew about Teo. The little cat was also puzzled as to how Jairus would know about that. While the little fox was thinking about how to explain, Teo assumed it must have been Skaram that told him. Seeing this, Jairus breathed a sigh of relief, almost exposing her true identity. Coming back to her senses, Jairus asked Teo the secret to his quick promotion, wondering if he had any special products to sell. In Jairus's view, without some special support, it would be impossible to collect so much money in such a short time. If Teo had obtained precious items through some unknown backing and made a lot of money, then she would definitely arrest the little cat on the spot. But Teo didn't hide anything. He said the products he sold were cherry tomatoes. Jairus had thought Teo would sell all kinds of things, but she really hadn't expected tomatoes. Not giving out, the little fox confirmed again with Teo. Seeing Jairus's reluctance to believe, Teo said that next time he brings them, he'll definitely show them to the little fox. Teo was also eager to level up and quickly urged Jairus to head to the merchant center. Walking behind, Jairus's understanding had been completely overturned. It was the first time she had heard that one could make so much money from cherry tomatoes. Meanwhile, in the real world, Jenny was showing off the D-grade magic cherry tomatoes his people had purchased. Taking a slow taste, Michael was amazed. Just as the outside world had described, the various effects were superior to the E-grade tomatoes he had previously purchased. At that moment, Jenny brought over their own cultivated tomatoes. Just as the two of them had anticipated, the tomatoes grown on Earth turned out to be ordinary tomatoes. Michael was not surprised by this result, and then he inquired about the results of planting inside the tower. Hearing this, Jenny answered that they had planted 100 magic cherry tomato seeds on the first floor of the Black Tower, of which 10 had already successfully germinated. Hearing this, Michael couldn't help but praise her, noting that all they needed to do now was to hire a Waken to protect the farm, and then their tower planting project would be mostly complete. Unbeknownst to Sejun Park, he continued working in the cave as usual. Meanwhile, at the merchant center on the 75th floor of the Black Tower, Teo's intermediate peddler badge was also processed. Holding the badge, he was overjoyed. After so much effort, the little cat had finally achieved results. Jairus sincerely congratulated him from behind. Next, Teo, accompanied by the little fox, headed to the trading location. The peddler's market gathered many peddlers, where they could trade with each other, rest, boast, and even participate in auctions of many expensive goods. This place also best demonstrated the peddler's abilities. Every peddler here was a battle-hardened veteran, and Jairus was curious to see how Teo would handle himself later. Soon, the little cat found its destination. Looking at the general store ahead, Jairus had some recollection of it. Inside, following Sejun Park's instructions, Teo bought a saw, 2 balls of wool and needles, and 2 pots. Seeing this, Jairus thought Teo planned to buy wholesale products, but the little cat reminded her that he sold cherry tomatoes. Hearing about tomatoes again, Jairus couldn't help but hold her forehead, really hoping to know what tricks the little cat had. After counting the items, the store owner said it totaled 2.4 dungeon coins. Hearing this, Jairus knew the owner had quoted high. These items weren't expensive, and the total should be around 2 dungeon coins. It was obvious that the store owner had intentionally raised the price. Now it was time to see how the naive little cat would deal with the cunning store owner. But unexpectedly, the little cat, just as before, adamantly asked the owner for a discount. Seeing this, the owner claimed he was already selling at wholesale price, but after some thought, said he could discount 0.2 dungeon coins because Teo was a newcomer. Jairus knew well that this was a common tactic among merchants: inflate the price first, then offer the customer a slight discount to entice them to complete the transaction. Most peddlers would generally choose to buy after receiving such a friendly price reduction. The little fox knew this store owner was tough to deal with, but didn't expect Teo's next statement to completely take the owner aback. He forcefully slapped the table, continuing to ask the owner to lower the price even more, which left the store owner unsure of what to do. The owner mention that he won't get lower prices elsewhere. Hearing the owner's reluctance to continue lowering the price, the little cat did not hesitate for a moment and immediately decided to leave with Jairus. Seeing this, the little fox asked Teo if he didn't want to continue bargaining. To this, the little cat told it that since the owner was unwilling to lower the price, there was nothing it could do. Initially, the store owner thought Teo was easy to fool, but after a round of negotiations, the owner eventually backed down. He then offered a price of 2 dungeon coins. However, the little cat always remembered Sejun Park's teachings and continued to bargain down to 1.8 dungeon coins. Left with no choice, the general store owner agreed to sell. The little fox now understood that Teo's previous success in bargaining was not due to random luck, but actually involved skill, a strategy that seemed destined to win from the start. Watching this, Jairus compared herself to Teo, realizing that if it were her, she would probably have settled at 2 dungeon coins because her upbringing made her feel embarrassed to continue bargaining. Through this additional test, Jairus gradually came to believe that Teo indeed made a significant income from selling cherry tomatoes. In fact, it wasn't as complicated as Jairus thought. The little cat simply demanded a discount 3 times. After slowly walking out of the store, Jairus thought aloud outside. Once she had cleared her thoughts, she approached Teo to thank him, and she wanted to part ways with the little cat here. Seeing this, Teo wanted to invite Jairus for a meal to express his gratitude. Hearing this, the little fox was very happy, but it did not want to cause any more inconvenience to Teo. Moreover, it had learned a lot from Teo. Over the years, its arrogance had grown. Jairus said that it was Teo who allowed her to reflect on herself after a long time. To this, the little cat was quite puzzled. Jairus appreciated Teo's modesty and reminded him to be careful, as those for the Silver Wolf tribe might still come looking for him. After saying goodbye, Jairus turned and left. Teo, hands on hips, remarked what a strange fox he encountered. Then, Teo set off towards the 99th floor. He was eager to have a good nap on Sejun Park's lap. Sometime later, at the headquarters of the Peddlers Association Investigation Bureau, Jairus was writing a report. After finishing, she leaned back in her chair, tired. Just then, a secretary came over to tell her that the director wants to arrange a meeting to discuss Greed's stolen items. Asking if she wanted to attend, Jairus said she would go shortly and handed over the report she had just written. This was a summary of the peddler recently under surveillance, and it included instructions to cancel the surveillance of them. The secretary noticed that this was about the cat merchant from before. Slowly opening the report, Jairus had high praise for Teo. She said that perhaps, after all this time, Teo was the first real merchant she had encountered in a while. Quickly, the next day arrived. The buddies in the cave had been busy all day, cultivating the fields. Today, they also planted corn and cherry tomatoes outside. However, just then, there seemed to be a problem with sprinkling Can Bunny's watering can. It turned out that it had run out of water. Seeing this, Sejun Park now realized that the water in the watering can was not infinite. Before he could examine it closely, Black Warrior Bunny hurriedly ran outside. He and Cart Rabbit were gesturing something in front of Sejun Park. After looking for a while, Sejun Park understood. It seemed something new had arrived in the pond. After coming inside and looking at the creatures in the pond, he was amazed. Even the queen honeybee came to join the spectacle. At this moment, deep red prawns, crayfish, appeared in the water. After arriving at the cave, Sejun Park thought there were only piranha fish in the pond, but to his surprise, a new creature had appeared. Now, Sejun Park wanted to know where the water in the pond came from, but then he also thought of a delicious crayfish feast. After Sejun Park explained, his buddies, just like him, all drooled. Sejun Park invited Black Bunny to catch them together, saying that they tasted better than they looked. Black Bunny summoned his own wooden mallet. It was a great opportunity to obtain new protein, and Sejun Park wouldn't miss it. The prawns below stared up at the people above, unsure of what they were about to do. Then, one of the crayfishes even lunged towards them. As for Black Warrior Bunny, his mallet was already smashing down on the large prawns in the pond. Just like that, new meat was added to the farm. At this moment, the crayfishes in the pond were terrified, but some of them lunged at Sejun Park on their own initiative. But for these harmless delicacies, Sejun Park swung his knife and instantly flipped them all over. Following closely, Black Warrior Bunny also quickly gave the finishing blow, using his mallet to knock all the crayfishes to the shore, while the other little rabbits were responsible for transporting them. Soon, the first crayfish was delivered to Sickle Bunny's hands, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't crack the hard shell. Left with no choice, Sickle Bunny had to seek help from Mrs. Rabbit. After catching the crayfishes, Sejun Park saw the difficulty Sickle Bunny was facing and immediately explained the reason to him. The shells were very hard, and they would need to cook them first. After some thought, Sejun Park decided to grill them. After wrapping the crayfishes in onion leaves, Sejun Park placed them next to the fire. Smelling the delicious fragrance that was emanating, both Sejun Park and Black Warrior Bunny were drooling as they waited for it to cook. Soon, the crayfishes were almost grilled. Sejun Park went to check if they were edible, peeling off the outer onion leaves, and the crayfishes inside turned bright red and shiny. Immediately, Sejun Park took them in his hands. Now that the crayfish was thoroughly cooked, he immediately demonstrated to the little rabbits how to eat it. When Sejun Park split the crayfish open, the fatty crayfish meat was immediately revealed inside. Smelling the indescribable aroma, Cart Bunny was the first to drool uncontrollably. After the demonstration, Sejun Park distributed the grilled crayfishes to the little rabbits. Soon, they were all enjoying the delicious crayfish. Sejun Park himself also started eating. The fresh crayfish required no additional seasoning, just simple roasting, yet the flavor was so exquisite. Just then, Mrs. Rabbit seemed about to throw away the crayfish heads. Seeing this, Sejun Park stopped her because there were still good things inside. Slowly picking up a piece of crayfish meat, Sejun Park dipped it into the rich crayfish roe. The combination of the two delicacies made Sejun Park only want one more thing, a nice drink to go along with it. Black Warrior Bunny next to him also wanted to try what Sejun Park was eating. Looking at the not very appealing crayfish roe in his hand, Black Warrior Bunny couldn't believe it was so delicious. With a skeptical attitude, it still took a light taste. Unexpectedly, the next second, Black Warrior Bunny was completely won over. It clutched the crayfish head and began to eat it frantically. It seemed that Black Warrior Bunny really liked the taste of the roe. Seeing how much it enjoyed it, Sejun Park picked up a new crayfish, ready to prepare another crayfish head as a treat for Black Warrior Bunny. Just then, Bay also came outside, smelling something that made it happy. Seeing the bear coming, Sejun Park asked it to wait a moment. Soon, a pile of golden crayfishes was placed in front of Bay. Sejun Park still wanted to demonstrate how to eat the crayfish as before, but unexpectedly, the next second Bay ate it shell and all, and expressed that it was very delicious. Seeing this, Sejun Park decided not to teach the correct way to eat it anymore. Meanwhile, on the second floor of the Black Tower, in an area known as Skeleton Village, what was once a peaceful village was now in ruins, with countless villagers who had lived in peace and prosperity being slaughtered by hunters. They desperately fled the hometown where they had lived for many years. Some of the small skeletons even tried to plead with the hunters, but were mercilessly killed by a single sword strike. Its skull slowly fell to the ground, and the next second it was crushed underfoot by someone. This person was Michael, who wanted to do farming inside the tower. Seeing the arrival of the big boss, the hunters greeted him. The hunters then reported their results to Michael, saying that they had almost cleared the more than half of the skeleton village on the second level. However, Michael was not satisfied with this result and immediately asked how much longer it would take to completely take it over. According to the current manpower, the hunters estimated it would take a few more months. Therefore, Michael provided a list of debt-ridden awakens on a permanent contract, believing that with their help, it would not be difficult to conquer it within a week. For Michael, the most important thing was to find land suitable for cultivation. In no time, his group arrived at the planting spot on the first floor. The magic cherry tomatoes in the fields had just ripened. Seeing this, Michael was immediately delighted and slowly picked one of them. But seeing no information, Michael realized this was not an item. Next, he wanted to try if the taste was consistent with what he had bought. However, after only a few chews, Michael's face suddenly changed, and he immediately spit it out onto the ground. Regaining his composure, he angrily questioned the researchers, because the tomatoes they had grown had no flavor at all. The people present were incredulous, as they had used the highest quality nutrient solution, but after trying it themselves, they couldn't refute it. The taste was worlds apart from the magic cherry tomatoes they had bought. In his anger, Michael violently destroyed the plants and viciously crushed the tomatoes. But it was this action that made Michael discover something different. The tomatoes he had just crushed contained not a single seed. While they were puzzled by this, Sejun Park was still sound asleep. However, at this time, the peanut farm outside the cave was once again visited by a thief. Gently picking up the leaves placed on the ground, 1003 did not hesitate to stuff them into his mouth. The fresh taste made him linger, unaware of the danger of his current situation. Before this, Michael, who had been planting in the Black Tower, discovered the reason for the failure. The cherry tomatoes they had grown had no seeds. But this was not the first time Michael had encountered such a situation. It turns out that 10 years ago, Michael also encountered a portal, after which he successfully arrived inside the Black Tower. However, after arriving at the Black Tower, Michael wasn't much interested in advancing through the levels because he found something more interesting, the extremely fertile land inside the tower. After arriving there, Michael felt his dreams were about to be realized. If he could cultivate inside the tower, then dominating the global food market would no longer be a dream. Thus, Michael took action. After advancing to a certain level inside the tower, he chose to leave the tower and then spent a great deal of effort to convince his father. Soon, with his father's support, his tower farming project began. Michael spent a lot of resources, but after a while, his dream was nearly shattered because the seeds he planted simply would not grow. It wasn't until people gradually explored the Black Tower that someone discovered that awakeners temporarily lose the ability to reproduce after entering the Black Tower. Awakeners begin to gradually recover this ability once they reach level 10, a side effect of their bodies initially adapting to magic. Similarly, the effect of non-reproduction also applies to plants, and crops brought from outside the tower cannot level up, so they won't produce seeds. Therefore, Michael could only try to buy tower-grown crops from peddlers, but he was refused because these items had already been monopolized by the wealthy greed on the 55th floor. At that time, Michael became desperate, as he was just a novice who had reached only the 10th floor. After leaving the tower again, Michael was criticized by everyone, including his father, for spending too much. Thus, the first tower farming project ended in a dismal failure. Recalling his once-held dream, Michael was even more unwilling to give up, so he quickly stood up, ordered his subordinates to gather all the hunters to the 38th floor, and took out a large amount of dungeon coins, Michael decided to buy all the D-grade magic cherry tomatoes owned by the cat merchant. If the E-grade didn't work, he thought a higher level might have a chance. By now, Michael had gone completely mad, seeing the magic cherry tomatoes as the key to achieving farming inside the tower. After several days of travel, Teo finally arrived near the cave unharmed. Just then, he noticed something on the ground. Picking it up for a closer look, the little cat recognized it as onion leaves from inside the cave. Continuing forward, it wasn't just onion leaves. Other leaves were also scattered on the ground. As Teo picked them up along the way, he suddenly bumped into something hard. Still eating at the mouth of the cave, 1003 also felt some movement below, so he raised his head to look over. Seeing the badge on Teo's chest, he recognized the little cat as a peddler. Teo questioned 1003 about where he got these leaves. Hearing this, 1003 did not hide anything and immediately pointed to the farmland ahead, saying he had picked them up from there. Hearing this, the little cat thought he was lying, because these leaves are very precious in the cave. Not only can they be used for various things, they can even be used as toilet paper. So Teo understood that Sejun Park would not likely discard them, and thus concluded that the Minotaur must have stolen them. Hearing this, 1003 instantly became angry, saying that he swears by honor that he would not steal something from someone else. Even facing a peddler, he would not tolerate such insults. Initially, the little cat was startled, thinking that he was clearly on the right side. Teo was no longer afraid. He asked 1003 to go with him to find Sejun Park, so they could determine who was right and who was wrong. Hearing this, the Minotaur warrior immediately agreed, and just like that, a cat and a Minotaur headed towards the cave. On the way, 1003 realized that the leaves were indeed claimed to belong to Sejun Park. If he could find him, it would indirectly fulfill the task the Ox King had given him, and he could then earn the Great King's praise. However, at this time, Sejun Park was still sound asleep in the cave, and soon Teo pounced right onto him. The strong impact instantly woke Sejun Park, who then knelt down on the ground in discomfort, but the little cat kept urging Sejun Park to get up. Slowly recovering, Sejun Park asked Teo what was going on. The little cat proudly announced that it had caught a thief. Soon after, Sejun Park came out with Teo, and 1003 was already waiting outside the cave. But now, seeing the huge Minotaur in front of him, Sejun Park couldn't believe this was the thief the little cat had caught. Once outside, Teo even pointed at 1003, urging Sejun Park to scold him along. Under the watchful eyes of 1003 and Sejun Park, the little cat also presented the evidence it had collected. The farmer then recognized them as the leaves they laid out on the field yesterday. 1003 looked at Sejun Park and then said that he had picked them up from the ground, arguing that if they weren't meant to be thrown away, they wouldn't have been left on the ground like that. With the help of a system message, Sejun Park recognized that this was a black Minotaur from the Minotaur clan. Realizing this, he understood that this was the monster that had disrupted the fields during the blue moon and later stolen the corn leaves that covered the peanut fields. Now, 1003 was engaged in a fierce argument, Teo insisting that as a Minotaur warrior, he could not possibly steal. As for Sejun Park, he saw an opportunity right before him. After a fruitless debate, the little cat asked Sejun Park to prove that the onion leaves should not have been discarded. Thus, Sejun Park responded to Teo, explaining to him and 1003 that the leaves were used to retain moisture in the field. Hearing this, the Minotaur warrior was completely dumbfounded. He hadn't expected that he had actually stolen something, and immediately 1003 hastily apologized to Sejun Park. He initially did not know that those were still needed, but such a simple apology was not accepted by Sejun Park, who demanded 100 dungeon coins as compensation for the theft. This instantly shocked the Minotaur. With no choice, 1003 had to admit that he indeed had no money, which was confirmed by Teo after checking the Minotaur's pockets. But this was already anticipated by Sejun Park, who then said that if there's no money, one can repay with labor. Seeing 1003 confused, Sejun Park carefully explained, starting from tomorrow, come here to work. Each day, you'll be paid 1 tower coin as a wage for debt repayment. 1003 understood Sejun Park's intention. Just as he was about to refuse, Sejun Park mentioned that if he works here, he could eat all the delicious corn and green onion leaves he wants. With these words, the proud Minotaur warrior was instantly persuaded. Excitedly, he agreed to the method of working to repay the debt. Soon after, Sejun Park was ready to sign a contract with 1003, who could come over the next day. Seeing this, 1003 happily extended his hand. Under the wide-eyed gaze of Teo, the farmer, and the Minotaur's contract was thus formed. Sejun Park's method deeply inspired the little cat, who had never known before that one could pay with labor when out of money. Teo quickly noted this down. After signing the contract, 1003 bid farewell to Sejun Park and the others. At this moment, Sejun Park thanked the little cat for catching the thief and gaining them another worker. However, Teo asked in return how long can he be CEO for this job well done, and was disappointed to find out that it only gained him 1 month. The little cat jumped onto Sejun Park, Teo playfully demanding more time, but was refused. Soon, the next day arrived. Early in the morning, Sejun Park and Black Warrior Bunny started catching crayfish. Having tasted the deliciousness of crayfish, the Black Warrior Bunny became increasingly motivated to catch them. Today, he skillfully knocked over a crayfish with 1 strike. Now, Sejun Park is responsible for collecting and dealing the final blow to the crayfish. In just a short while, a large pile of crayfishes had accumulated. After finishing the preparations for today's breakfast, Sejun Park praised Black Warrior Bunny for its increasingly skilled technique. But the next moment, Black Warrior Bunny was enveloped in a pale blue light, and the wooden mallet in its hand transformed. When the light faded, the former wooden mallet had become more aggressive. Even Black Warrior Bunny found it unbelievable, and this seemed to be its second awakening. The other little buddies were overjoyed for Black Warrior Bunny. Seeing it become stronger, Sejun Park finally felt comfortable putting Black Warrior Bunny in full charge of catching the crayfish. Sometime later, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear called out to Sejun Park from outside the cave. They seemed to have discovered something joyous. Seeing this, Sejun Park came outside. At that moment, Bay stretched out its bare paw, then pointed towards a large rock. Looking up, Sejun Park spotted a brand new beehive. Hearing the noise outside, the Queen Poisonous Honeybee Jr. emerged. Seeing Sejun Park in front of her, the little Queen Honeybee Jr. immediately showed a smile, then swiftly flew towards the farmer. At that moment, Sejun Park realized she was the Queen Honeybee Jr. that had hatched earlier. Sejun Park happily greeted the little Queen Honeybee Jr., worried he might never see her again. It turns out her departure was to form a new bee colony. Seeing Bay wanting to get closer, Sejun Park introduced the little Queen Honeybee Jr. to it and asked Bay to protect the Queen Honeybee Jr.'s home well so they could have more delicious honey. Feeling the goodwill, Bay soon greeted the bees. However, at that moment, a loud noise came from behind. It turned out to be 1003, who had come to work as per the contract. But the next second, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear's huge paw suddenly blocked the way, and she roared angrily at 1003, seemingly telling him to leave quickly. 1003 hadn't expected to encounter the Crimson Grizzly Bear, and though it was beyond his expectations, as a proud bull warrior, he stood his ground. He would not back down. Sejun Park wanted to stop Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear from fighting, but the Crimson Grizzly Bear, to avoid accidentally hurting them, pushed them to the side. As for it and the Minotaur, they were now facing each other. The little buddies in the cave, hearing the noise, also came outside to ask what had happened. Seeing the little cat come out, Sejun Park hurriedly asked it to persuade 1003 and Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear. If they don't stop, the ensuing battle would surely lead to injuries. Teo and Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear explained that the Minotaur came to work and meant no harm, but the Crimson Grizzly Bear ordered them to quickly return to the cave to take cover, as it could not tolerate Minotaurs infiltrating her territory. Helplessly, Sejun Park went to persuade 1003, but he was unwilling to comply. As a Minotaur warrior, fleeing was a dishonorable act. At this moment, Sejun Park really had no solution. Their battle seemed unavoidable. Meanwhile, Aileen also came asking for something to eat at this time. Seeing this, Sejun Park replied that they were too busy at the moment to prepare anything. But Aileen didn't come to help mediate. Instead, she urged Sejun Park to hurry up because she had been hungry all morning. Bay behind Sejun Park expressed the same sentiment. As for 1003, he was already ready to launch an attack. The Crimson Grizzly Bear was not afraid either. It was the ruler of this forest, and the Minotaur's intrusion was something Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear could not tolerate. Teo was now urging Sejun Park to return to the cave. Seeing that none of his companions were listening to him, and with two huge monsters about to clash, Sejun Park suddenly panicked and covered his head. Unable to bear the chaotic scene any longer, Sejun Park shouted that if no one was willing to calm down and listen to him, he would no longer provide food to anyone. At these words, both 1003 and Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear were stunned. Bay and the little rabbits were also frightened. Aileen in the management space also stopped her urging prompts, and Teo tearfully apologized to Sejun Park. Now facing the farmer's anger, everyone quieted down. The scene finally became quiet. The two giant beasts that were just about to fight now fearfully looked at Sejun Park. Hearing the farmer say he would not provide food to anyone, all the little buddies on the scene quieted down. Even the administrator, Aileen, obediently stopped making noise. Seeing that everyone was willing to listen to him, Sejun Park explained the consequences of a big fight, which would not only destroy the farmland, but also harm everyone, and there would be no more source of food in the future. To resolve the conflict between the two sides, Sejun Park decided to discuss things during breakfast. He then called on the little rabbits to start cooking together. Arriving in the cave, Black Warrior Bunny was catching fish and trapping crayfishes as usual, and the other companions were not idle either. Everyone played their part, all working hard to prepare today's breakfast. Sejun Park was in charge of cooking a variety of delicious dishes. In no time, plates of fresh and tasty food were ready. Once everything was brought outside, 1003 and Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear, smelling the delicious aroma, could not help but widen their eyes. Next, the farm companions enjoyed the food together. On Aileen's side, Sejun Park had prepared many roasted corns, and after giving thanks, Aileen went to have breakfast. Now, as 1003 was eating the food in his hands, he also reached for the roasted corn on the plate, but his claw collided with Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear's claw. Just a small friction, and a menacing glare is shared between them. Helplessly, Sejun Park cleared his throat, and it was now time to properly introduce everyone. He explained that Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear and Bay were there to protect the farm's safety. Just as Sejun Park was about to explain the identity of the Minotaur to the Crimson Grizzly Bear, 1003 briskly introduced himself. Seeing this, Sejun Park took the opportunity to inform Mother Crimson Grizzly grizzly bear that 1003 would be working on the farm from now on, and he would also be one of the companions. At the same time, he made it clear that fighting was absolutely not allowed on the farm. If a fight occurred, there would be no food for anyone. This consequence scared the crimson grizzly bear and 1003. They did not want to return to the days of going hungry, to continue enjoying delicious food every day. The two monsters that previously did not get along now joined forces as if the earlier incident had never happened. Seeing them reconcile, Sejun Park finally felt relieved, but 1003 was now somewhat puzzled because he still didn't know what he would do. Sejun Park, while petting the little cat, explained his job is straightforward, and then took 1003 to the side of the barren land in front. Sejun Park needed him to turn over the soft soil beneath this small patch of barren land until lunchtime, just as during the blue moon. Hearing that the task was so simple and that there would be lunch afterward, 1003 was still somewhat in disbelief, but after getting confirmation from Sejun Park, he prepared to start plowing, slowly lying down to prepare. The next second, 1003's horns became even stronger. Then, it suddenly exerted force, and in an instant, it had plowed several meters away. Thinking about the delicious lunch waiting for him, 1003's enthusiasm was sky-high. Sejun Park was also very happy, as this plan to create fertile farmland would advance even further. Next, he and the little rabbits also had to start working. Today, they needed to plant green onions first. Compared to other crops, green onions are the easiest to increase yield. Not only is planting convenient, but after cutting off the scallion leaves, they will continue to split and grow back over time. Then, they could take the newly split sprouts and plant them again. With everyone's efforts, a large patch of new scallions was quickly planted. Thanks to the excellent environment of the 99th floor, the scallions grew very quickly. However, with the increase in the number of crops, a new problem arose. There wasn't enough water in the little rabbit's sprinklers. Going back and forth to fetch water would significantly reduce work efficiency. Currently, the cultivated land is not extensive, but the capacity of the water bottles already cannot keep up. But just then, Mr. Rabbit underwent a transformation. Just like Black Warrior Bunny before him, Mr. Rabbit also successfully underwent a second awakening, and his sprinkler turned golden. Mr. Rabbit was very happy, and Sejun Park was also thrilled. He inquired whether the water capacity had increased, and Mr. Rabbit indicated that compared to before, the golden water bottle now had double the capacity. Meanwhile, on the other side of the barren lands, the Ox King was still waiting, but 1003 was nowhere to be seen. After some time, they completed most of the work, and then Sejun Park went back to bring up the rabbit babies. It was their first time coming outside the crater, and Sejun Park introduced Bay to the babies. Now, the crimson grizzly cub was very curious and slowly sniffed the rabbit babies, which startled the babies. However, upon sensing Bay's goodwill, the babies threw themselves into the bear's embrace. Seeing this, Teo immediately became a bit unhappy, pouting jealously. Thus, the little cat confidently called out to the rabbit babies, indicating that the kids should follow Uncle for an adventure outside the cave. However, not a single baby came down. They seemed to have fallen for the soft, cuddly crimson grizzly cub. Seeing this, Teo's heart broke instantly, thinking that the children had forgotten about their uncle. The little cat, trembling, shed tears, hammering the ground in sorrow. I raised you with so much love and dedication. Seeing the little cat so distressed, Sejun Park scooped it up and placed it in his arms, telling Teo not to be too sad and to eat a cat treat to ease his mood. After a while, Sejun Park asked if it was time for Teo to have another auction. Hearing this, the little cat replied with a helpless look that although it also wanted to go down, it couldn't for now. Then, Teo and Sejun Park explained their previous encounters, learning that the silver wolves were actually after the hat on his head, which surprised Sejun Park. Now, the little cat waved its hand, indicating that the auction would have to wait a bit longer. As for Sejun Park, he was somewhat puzzled. Although the hat had great effects, it was useless if not for a farmer. Could there be another farmer like him on a different floor? Thinking of this, Sejun Park came up with a good solution. The little cat quickly inquired what Sejun Park was thinking. At that moment, Sejun Park said that as a peddler, Teo had the rights of a free mercenary. If they could hire 1003, then they wouldn't have to fear the threat of the silver wolves. In the Black Tower, the requirements of mercenaries and peddlers are the same. Only locals can assume these professions. According to the agreement between the Mercenary Association and the Peddlers Association, as long as the free mercenaries pay the fees, they can use the merchant channels at any time. Locals who are not in mercenary professions can also be temporarily hired by peddlers for protection. Although Sejun Park himself also wanted to go down with them, unfortunately, temporary mercenaries also have to be locals. Now, the little cat wondered if 1003 would agree to their request, because the Minotaur is a monster from the 99th floor. Hearing this, Sejun Park assured it that as long as 1003 was willing, he would shave off 3 dungeon coins from his debt per day as a temporary mercenary. Upon hearing the farmer's words, Teo was very excited. If Sejun Park could persuade the Minotaur warrior, it would have no worries. 3 days later, at this moment, the Minotaur warrior was in the desolate lands, but it seemed to be avoiding something. Just as 1003 thought it was safe to leave, it was stopped by a voice. The voice turned out to be 1004, a female Minotaur from the Minotaur tribe, whose arrival shocked 1003. Before his companion could ask anything, 1003 hastily said he wasn't going anywhere but was immediately scrutinized by 1004. Judging from his glowing complexion, she assumed he was eating without telling them. 1003 adamantly tried to explain that it was not true. 1004 wanted him to take her to find food. Seeing 1003's reluctance, she immediately said that the Ox King had been looking for him lately, and if he didn't take her along, she would tell on him about his secrecy. With no other choice, 1003 reluctantly agreed. On the road, 1003 told his companion that this matter must be kept secret. 1004 immediately assured 1003 without hesitation. After a while, they arrived in the forest, and Sejuan Park, who was inside a cave, heard noises outside and climbed out with the little cat. It turned out that 1003 had brought his companion here. Seeing the Sejuan Park come out, 1004 happily greeted him and introduced herself. On the side, 1003 explained the purpose of their visit, asking Sejuan Park if his friend could work together on the farm. However, the expansion of the field was not urgent, so they didn't need extra help. Sejuan Park wanted 1004 to become a temporary mercenary for the little cat, responsible for protecting Teo's safety, with a salary of 3 dungeon coins per day. The little cat on his shoulder also pleaded, but to their surprise, 1004 immediately refused, as she did not need dungeon coins, as coins cannot be eaten. Hearing her response, both Teo and Sejuan Park were stunned. Immediately, Sejuan Park informed her that in addition to the salary, there would be 3 meals a day and snacks during free time. Hearing this, 1004 immediately agreed to the job of protecting the little cat. Hearing such good conditions, 1003 quickly expressed his desire to go as well. Seeing this, Sejuan Park agreed to let them both go. With the protection of the 2 minotaurs, he felt more at ease. Hearing that Sejuan Park would also prepare lunch for the road, they were even more astonished. The next second, 1004 threw herself into 1003's arms, thanking her companion for introducing her to such a good place. Feeling 1004's warmth, 1003 was also very happy to be with her. Watching the 2 minotaurs openly showing their affection, Sejuan Park seemed to understand the situation. Having set the time for the trip, Sejuan Park and his friends began preparing food. Soon, a large pile of green onions was cut. Sejuan Park was worried whether Teo's rucksack could still hold everything, as it was already filled with lots of magic cherry tomatoes. In response, the little cat assured Sejuan Park and immediately threw his rucksack upwards. Then, with a magical activation, the large pile of green onions was completely absorbed into it. Sejuan Park was somewhat surprised by this, as the capacity was much larger than before. Teo proudly displayed his intermediate peddler badge and stated that the rucksack's capacity had significantly increased after the upgrade. It was not until Teo took it out that Sejuan Park realized the color of the badge was different than before. However, Teo's boasting was quickly cut short as a farmer pinched his cat face, urging him to hurry up and get ready. He also reminded Teo not to forget to pass on the gifts for his family. The little cat confidently assured that it would complete the mission. After the preparations, 1003 and 1004 also embarked on their first mercenary journey. The little cat now happily waved goodbye, while Sejuan Park asked them to be careful on the road and told the 2 Minotaur's warriors to protect Teo well. The other companions were also there, as they always came to see the little cat off whenever it traveled. After they had gone a distance, Sejuan Park suddenly worried whether Teo might be eaten by the Minotaurs, which gave Black Warrior Bunny quite a scare. Several hours later, in the Pathway Village, a residential area for peddlers. Currently, the Silver Wolf tribe are keeping watch over the area. Now, Elke had brought 3 chicken legs, their lunch, with the last of their funds. While Elko was calling Elko to come and eat, he seemed to have no appetite. Having waited here for so many days, Elko was tired and asked if they could return to the 85th floor, as it had been a long time since they had left their tribe. At this, the Silver Wolf tribe leader, Elko, was quite angry. They had a serious responsibility on this journey. How could they return like this, facing their starving tribe members waiting at home? If they did not complete this commission, the Silver Wolf tribe would not be able to obtain food from greed, which was crucial for the survival of their tribe. After coming to his senses, Elko quickly apologized. The old Silver Wolf could only sigh, understanding Elko's feelings, and still handed over the delicious chicken leg. For this commission, the tribe had allocated money for food. Only by eating well could they have the strength to repay. But the next second, Elka sensed the long-awaited presence. Seeing this, Elke asked the leader what was going on. The old Silver Wolf looked down and finally found their commission's target. It turned out that Teo had finally arrived here. This time, Elka swore that no matter what, he must obtain information about the Straw Hat. Now many merchants couldn't help but look in the same direction, because 1003 and 1004 were too eye-catching. For a moment, the merchants were buzzing with talk, recognizing that the 2 Minotaurs were from the Minotaur tribe. It was the first time the present merchants had seen a monster from the 99th floor. They wondered what kind of great peddler could have such powerful mercenaries employed. Hearing someone looking for a merchant who could hire Minotaur guards, the little cat proudly declared it was him, and Teo stepped forward with pride. At this moment, he was absorbed in his own world, completely unaware of the many voices of doubt. When the little cat snapped back to reality, it only then heard others saying that lying wasn't good. Hearing this, Teo was indignant and turned around to shout for 1003 and 1004, only only to find that the two minotaurs who had been following him were now nowhere to be seen. Near a nearby hamster's stall, the two minotaur creatures were attracted by the cabbages being sold. Smelling the fresh aroma, 1003 shamelessly drooled, while 1004 was already asking about the price. However, the hamster owner was trembling with fear, pleading for mercy and fright. Just then, the little cat finally found the two minotaurs. Teo was now a bit angry, as they were supposed to be there to protect him, so why were they there? Seeing this, 1003 immediately apologized. After some explanations, the little cat understood that it was their first time leaving the 99th floor, so they were curious about these things. Moreover, 1003 was also puzzled about why this place was called the Peddler Pathway. Shouldn't it be accessible to all the original residents of the tower? To this, Teo was not surprised, as the two minotaurs had always lived on the 99th floor and were not aware of the past changes in the Black Tower. At that moment, the little cat turned its head and spotted a pile of boxes, and immediately Teo jumped onto them. Facing the confusion of the two minotaurs, the little cat began an impromptu history class. Back then, a towering tree pierced through the entire Black Tower, with branches spreading from the 1st to the 99th floor. However, due to the abundance of pathways, they couldn't tell which ones were safe. So, the first great peddlers founded the Peddlers Association and streamlined the pathways, closing down the dangerous paths and maintaining the safe ones. The other two partners founded the Mercenaries Association and the Magic Tower, and these three associations heralded a new era within the tower. They reached an agreement among themselves. During the initial construction, each of the three associations had their roles, providing the necessary resources to each other, with the management of the corridors being the responsibility of the Peddlers Association. Hence the name, the Peddler's Pathway. The little cat's erudition earned applause from the two minotaurs, and a complimented Teo added that this was Peddlers 101 for intermediate, but in actuality, it was on page 1 of the guidebook for rookie peddlers. Although it's called the Peddler's Pathway, all residents of the Black Tower can use it, but there are paid pathways known as shortcuts, which are exclusively for peddlers. Since peddlers need to travel to many places, a fast route is essential. In this residential village is the central point of the paid pathway. From here they would travel to the 40th floor and then transfer to the 38th floor, significantly reducing the travel time. 1003 didn't expect the journey to their destination to be so complicated. After finishing the explanation, Teo did not continue on their way because it was mealtime. Hearing that the little cat was going to take them to eat, 1003 and 1004 were very excited, but Teo said he would take them to a fish restaurant and asked the two minotaurs if they liked fish. However, the little cat did not notice that Elka, the Silver Wolf tribe leader, had already pounced towards him. Teo sensed a sudden danger as the old Silver Wolf landed in front of the little cat. It glared menacingly at the little cat, and seeing this, Teo instantly curled up in fear, not expecting the opponent to be waiting for him here. While Elka was threatening the little cat, an enraged 1003 instantly swung an iron fist, smashing the ground into rubble. However, the old Silver Wolf reacted quickly, and the strike did not harm it. But when Elka clearly saw the Minotaur creature in front of him, he could not believe his eyes, recognizing it as a warrior from the Minotaur tribe. At that moment, 1003 coldly asked the other party's identity, while protecting Teo behind him. With 1003's protection, the little cat's fear dissipated a lot, and it quickly stated that it was indeed Elka who had been chasing it. Understanding the situation, the Minotaur warrior prepared to give the old Silver Wolf a good thrashing. At the same time, two other Silver Wolves from above charged down, intending to help their leader attack 1003. But before Elko and Elki could get close, 1004 instantly appeared in front of the two wolves. The next second, she swung two punches, and the two Silver Wolves were sent flying in the blink of an eye. Watching his tribespeople heavily hit the ground, Elka couldn't help but worry. Beside him, 1004 teased, "So there are two more puppies, huh?" She then told 1003 to take good care of Teo, as she would handle the fight herself. The little cat was worried, saying it might be dangerous for 1004 to go alone. Hearing this, 1003 reassured Teo, asserting that they were monsters from the 99th floor, and these pups were no match for them. Besides, 1004 was even stronger than himself. Listening to 1003's confidence, plus the blush on his face, the little cat was puzzled. Teo then said that there was no need to kill the Silver Wolves. 1004 agreed to this, saying she will try not to. The two Silver Wolves in front finally recovered, saying they could still hold on. Elko asked the leader what they should do next. After some thought, Elka decided they couldn't give up. If they failed this time, they would never have another chance. The three Silver Wolves then readied themselves again. Now, a battle was about to ensue between the Minotaur warriors from the 99th floor and the Silver Wolf tribe from the 85th floor. Meanwhile, in the Cave of the Sky, Sickle Bunny was trimming the fur of Cart Bunny. Before long, Cart Bunny's fur became very smooth and comfortable. Black Warrior Bunny and Sejun Park praised Sickle Bunny on the side. It was now Sejun Park's turn. He just needed his hair trimmed a bit shorter. But as Sickle Bunny was getting ready to start, a hot breath puffed on its face from Bay's nose. Suddenly, Sickle Bunny's nose became very itchy. Then it sneezed explosively, and unfortunately for Sejun Park, Sickle Bunny accidentally took a tuft of his hair. Seeing this, both Sickle Rabbit and Bay were terrified, while Sejun Park was still naively looking forward to his new hairstyle. hairstyle. Back in the peddler village, Elka hesitated no longer and immediately led the two wolves in a charge towards their opponent. Seeing this, 1004 showed no fear and was about to throw a punch with all her might, but the next second, Elke appeared in front of her and viciously bit down. She firmly clamped onto 1004's right hand, which was about to punch, while Elko also didn't remain idle, biting at 1004's leg. At this moment, the two wolves had effectively restrained the Minotaur warrior's movements. Seeing this, Elka's claws suddenly reached forward, grabbing 1004's horn to find a leverage point. The old silver wolf prepared to deliver a fatal blow, biting down on 1004's neck in an instant. In just a few seconds, the cooperation among the three silver wolves was nearly perfect. However, Elka immediately realized something was amiss, because there was no scent of fresh blood. 1004's skin was as tough as steel, and his teeth could not penetrate it. Realizing the old silver wolf's shock, 1004 calmly stated that of course wolf's fangs would not tear a minotaur's skin. As soon as she finished speaking, her left fist struck Elke like a whirlwind. The severe impact heavily wounded the silver wolf, but 1004's counterattack was far from over. She grabbed the helpless Elke and then violently threw her forward. The poor silver wolf was smashed into a pile of wooden planks. Seeing this, Elko was immediately frantic and momentarily let go of his bite. By the time Elko reacted, it was already too late. 1004 showed no mercy, lifting her leg and violently kicking him away. Elka, still biting at the neck, was shocked. He hadn't anticipated 1004's combat strength to be this formidable. In his surprise, 1004 had already grasped the old silver wolf in her hand, and the next second, she harshly smashed him onto the ground. At this moment, Elka realized they had lost, but he really couldn't accept it, knowing so many of his tribespeople were waiting for him. However, 1004's iron fist was about to strike him down, and in this moment, the old silver wolf remembered events from many years ago. Back then, his father was still teaching him. They were the pure-blood silver wolf tribe of the Black Tower, stronger than any tribe. Their spirits are destined to become guardian angels of the tribe after death. This was the fundamental strength of the silver wolf tribe. They could inherit the spirit will and strength of their ancestors. It was for this reason that Elka's father taught him, "Our honor is our ancestors' honor. Do good and live a life of dignity. Then, you will get a response from the ancestors one day." But misfortunes always come unexpectedly. The Black Tower faced an unprecedented famine. Other tribes even started infighting, just to plunder resources. Soon, conflict also erupted within the silver wolf tribe, and Elka's father was killed by another wolf tribe while protecting him. Years later, the once hopeful youth, Elka, had become the tribe leader, protecting his people. To ensure the children could live well, Elka reluctantly worked for the wealthy tyrant. Greed. This was opposed by his tribespeople because it was greed who had caused their current situation. The silver wolves did not approve of their leader's actions. Working for that despicable boar was an insult to the silver wolf tribe's honor. Despite how painful it was inside, Elka still countered his people's words because he truly had no other options. Even in his unconsciousness, he was still worried about the children of his tribe. Fortunately, 1004 had not delivered a killing blow, and Teo confirmed that Elka had just fainted. At that moment, 1004 asked if they should break their legs so they wouldn't have to worry about being tracked anymore. Thinking this over, Teo repeatedly refused, believing it to be too cruel. After some thought, the little cat decided to take them back. Such matters were best left to Sejun Park to handle. Meanwhile, in the cave, Sickle Bunny and Bay, panicked by the holy glow of the skin, were still discussing how to explain themselves. Sejun Park thought the haircut was done and reached out to touch his head. The next second, he stood up in alarm because there was a bald spot on his head. However, Sejun Park couldn't see it himself, and he regretted not having Teo by a mirror. The nearby Queen Honeybee also noticed the bald spot, and seeing this, Sickle Bunny hurriedly apologized to Sejun Park. Not wanting his friend to feel too bad, he repeatedly reassured him that anyone could make a mistake, and he just needed to wear a straw hat so no one would notice. But as he talked, Sejun Park became despondent because it couldn't really be covered up. Just then, Mrs. Rabbit also came outside, and upon learning of the situation, she was shocked and immediately wanted to retrim Sejun Park's hair. Although saddened, Sejun Park returned to the haircutting spot. Mrs. Rabbit decisively pulled out her own scissors. Sometime later, in the administrator's space, Aileen was comfortably reading a book, but soon, she had finished all her magic cherry tomato snacks. Now that she was grown up, the original portion was no longer satisfying, but she was hesitant to ask for more, worried the farmer might mistake her for a pig with wings once again. However, she could no longer worry about that now, and Aileen began to call for Sejun Park through a large crystal ball. Upon closer inspection, she noticed the situation in the cave. Just then, Sejun Park saw Aileen's message and slowly turned his head back. The man merely changed his hairstyle, yet it made the noble black dragon blush. Before this, due to Sickle Rabbit's slip-up, Sejun Park had a bald spot on his head. Fortunately, Mrs. Rabbit successfully remedied it. By the time Aileen wanted to find Sejun Park, she discovered that his appearance had greatly changed. Seeing the radiant Sejun Park, Aileen was instantly astonished. Seeing no messages in the message bar, Sejun Park asked her if something had happened. Aileen in the administrator's space was now at a loss for words. The farmer's new look made her heart flutter, and her face turned even redder. But at that moment, Sejun Park Park continued to move closer, making Aileen extremely flustered, so she warned him against coming closer. After a while, Aileen finally regained her composure and then clarified her purpose. It turned out she needed some food, preferably some crayfish. Seeing this, Sejun Park explained that the food in the pond had been diminishing these days. The number of crayfishes slowly decreasing, and there weren't as many piranhas either. So recently, the farm mainly focused on vegetables, and after eating them for several days, Sejun Park felt somewhat hungry from the lack of protein. Fortunately, he could offer Aileen something else as a substitute, and he immediately took some corn. Aileen was very thankful to Sejun Park for this. The next second, she accepted the food. As she was leaving, Aileen couldn't help but say that the new hairstyle really suited Sejun Park and looked very good. She then hurriedly left as if fleeing. Hearing Aileen's praise for the first time, Sejun Park appeared very happy. Next, he planned to continue diving into his work. In the administrator's space on the other side, Aileen's hands trembled as she held the food, and her heart was pounding. Touching her own dragon heart, she was very puzzled, not understanding why her heart was beating so fast. After a moment, Aileen quickly shook her head. She thought it must have been the sudden change in Sejun Park that startled her. Turning around to go eat, but looking again at the food in her hands, Aileen suddenly remembered what Sejun Park had said, and she began to search through the bookshelf. Before long, she picked up a fit cookbook. With this book, Aileen was now full of confidence. Her face flushed. She seemed prepared to make something for Sejun Park. Several days later, Teo finally arrived at the 38th floor of the Black Tower. Seeing the arrival of the peddler, the adventurers excitedly welcomed him. The little cat did not disappoint everyone. This time it brought 3,600 level D magic cherry tomatoes, auctioning them in batches of 400 each. Hearing such a large quantity, the adventurers were initially surprised. Then a fierce auction unfolded. Everyone was enthusiastic about the higher grade tomatoes, and within just a few minutes, only 2,000 remained. At that moment, someone offered 1,600 dungeon coins to buy the remaining magic cherry tomatoes. Such a wealthy adventurer immediately impressed the little cat. The bidder also revealed their identity to others. It turned out they were sent by Michael. After selling all the magic cherry tomatoes, Teo waved goodbye to everyone. Other adventurers, although dissatisfied, could not compete with the huge multinational company. Dongshik and others lamented the increasing difficulty of buying magic cherry tomatoes, but fortunately, he knew Teo, and as long as they dealt through the little cat with Sejun Park, they expected to have access to many resources. Just then, the adventurers sent by Michael exclaimed, because the previously hidden name of the producer was now visible. They were curious about who this farmer Sejun Park really was. Hearing this, Dongshik became very anxious, quickly grabbed the magic cherry tomatoes, and told the others to let him have a look too. Slowly opening the message panel, Dongshik immediately felt uneasy, as the producer's name indeed appeared on it. Learning that Sejun Park's occupation was a farmer, he was startled once again. The other adventurers made a quick decision and immediately called everyone back to the guild camp on the first level. They needed to ascertain Sejun Park's identity and ensure he would be brought to their faction. Thinking about the valuable information they could gain from this operation, the leading adventurer was already fantasizing about a promotion. Hearing the other party's words, Dongshik felt quite helpless. He didn't want to miss the opportunity to win over Sejun Park, and more importantly, the exposure of the name meant that Sejun Park's family could be in great trouble. To the wealthy outsiders, magic cherry tomatoes are more precious than jewels. If the producer is known within the tower, they would certainly try to kidnap Sejun Park's family as leverage to monopolize the supply. From what Teo had told him before, Dongshik knew that Sejun Park could not leave the tower, which meant he likely wasn't aware of the situation outside. Just then, the little cat actively sought out Dongshik, but before Teo could even greet him, Dongshik scooped him up and rushed to a secluded area. Once they reached an open space, he carefully checked the surroundings. Then, he gently set Teo down on the ground and asked why the producer's name had suddenly appeared. Hearing this, the little cat explained about the redaction of the producers to protect rookie peddlers and its own promotion to an intermediate peddler, but it was curious why Dongshik was so anxious. Dongshik shared his speculation. Since Sejun Park's real name had appeared, his family might face danger. The outside world is obsessed with their magic cherry tomatoes. Originally, the producer's name was obscured and nobody knew the situation, but now that the real name was exposed, someone would definitely try to harm Sejun Park's family to secure a monopoly. Upon hearing Dongshik's explanation, Teo instantly panicked, fearing blame from Sejun Park and unsure of what to do. Seeing this, Dongshik reassured the little cat, promising that their guild would do everything possible to protect Sejun Park's family. With urgency, Dongshik wanted to quickly return to the first floor. Before leaving, Teo asked him for another favor. He took out a basket of health corn and agility carrots, then asked Dongshik to deliver them to Sejun Park's family. The payment for this was 200 magic cherry tomatoes. After checking the information on the two types of crops, Dongshik realized these were also items that would cause a scramble. He then promised Teo that he would definitely deliver the goods, and the two waved goodbye. Looking at these magical crops before him, Dongshik thought it was time to tell the guild master about this matter. Sometime later, at the entrance to the 38th floor pathway, 1003 and 1004 were waiting with the three wolves for Teo. At that moment, Elka was still very indignant. Thinking that the two minotaurs were serving as bodyguards for such a lowly peddler, Elka Teo angrily stated that it seemed the legends about the 99th floor were false. Hearing the silver wolf ranting nearby, 1004 really wanted to beat it up again, but 1003 stopped her. Just then, Teo finally appeared. Teo ran back quickly. With the situation being urgent, he asked the two minotaurs to get ready to immediately return to the cave. Hearing it was about Sejun Park's family, 1003 did not hesitate and immediately, along with 1004, picked up the 3 silver wolves and set off. However, Teo looked at the stalls ahead and asked them to wait for him. He then quickly picked up a string with a purple gemstone. Upon learning that it cost 2 dungeon coins, the little cat couldn't resist starting to bargain. Just like before, it wanted the seller to lower the price a bit.